Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. Jo Weatherford's remarkable transformation took her from the glamorous yet tumultuous world of a Playboy model to a distinguished professor, channeling her experiences into empowering others. Her journey through personal trials, including battling addiction, catalyzed a profound change, leading her to academia. After earning her master's degree in human development, she dedicated herself to educating others about addiction at the University of Nevada. Now an esteemed TEDx speaker, Jo offers groundbreaking insights into overcoming addiction, inspiring a journey from vulnerability to victory. Woohoo! Jo, it is so awesome to have you on. Thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I would just love for you just to go ahead and share your journey from being a Playboy model to a university professor and how those pivotal moments led you to make such a significant change in your own life's direction.
Oh, yes. Well, it was a very unexpected turn in life that led me into that industry. I was actually a broadcast journalist. I was co-hosting a show on our local NBC during college. I really, really wanted to go and report on the news and big current events and be a serious journalist. And then I started getting offers from Playboy, and yeah, the money was good. I was an complete alcoholic at that point. I was really high functioning though. So, I could go and be on for like an hour. And in that industry, it was almost expected that you would be a little out there and drinking, and it just fit at the time. I would have never done it sober, but it was a good experience for me considering where I was at. There was literally no other option. By that point, my alcoholism had gotten so bad there was no way anybody reputable was going to hire me. That's not to say that Playboy wasn't reputable, but no NBC, ABC, anybody was going to have me show up on set in the condition that I was in. So I lived that lifestyle. I remember actually, this is one really pivotal moment for me. I woke up on my kitchen floor and I'm in this beautiful house in Newport Beach. I had just shot for another magazine. My boyfriend plays for the Chargers. Like on paper, to some people, it looked like I had this great life. And here I am waking up on the floor. I don't know if it's morning, night. I don't know what day it is. I probably didn't even know what month it was. And I hated myself. And I was so depressed. I was suicidal. And I just finally had had enough. And I went to rehab. So I went to rehab. It didn't stick that time, but it did get me sober long enough to get out of LA, which was really important. It kept me alive. It got me out of LA. It was also interesting in rehab and detox. It was like 100 grand too. They fed me Sunny Delight and Ruffles potato chips, and I put on like 50, 60 pounds. So I went from like this hot model to I was unrecognizable, bloated, just awful, right? So that aided in my decision to leave LA, but it all worked in my favor. So I came back to Nevada and just kind of got it together and then went back to school, and I knew I wanted to help people. I didn't have a direction at that time, but addiction's always run in my family. Obviously, my own journey, I decided to focus on that, and here we are. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I know sometimes thinking back to our stories, it's like my story can go on for like hours because there's like so many like layers and layers and layers of like what we can share. And oh my goodness, it took me back to like how you were saying that people thought like, hey, everything is okay on the outside because that's how it was for me. Also, I was, married. Everyone thought I had a great marriage, and, wonderful son, everything. And no, the home was bad. There was abuse. There was like recklessness behavior. I mean, I put my child in danger so many times. Like it was just horrific, horrific, horrific experiences. But people don't notice that because I had, for myself, I don't know about you, but I had to drink a fifth of vodka a day in order for me to actually function, like function to drive, to drive.
Right.
And I thought that was like normal for everybody. I'm like, oh, if I have this tolerance, everybody else should have this tolerance. And no, it was really where I had to sit down in my own despair and really say, I'm so sick of my sickness. I'm tired of living this way. And yeah, I know you have 12 years under your belt. Congratulations on that. I only have
Thank
6, but I'm good. I'm getting there.
Well, that's amazing, and I really applaud you for sharing your story so transparently, especially with your son, because it's true, our highlight reel looks so much different. If people could freeze frame the dirty secrets in the moments of despair and see the reality, I think of what so many of us are going through.
Mhm.
You know, it paints such a different picture, but to come through that, to have 6 years, to have 12 years, to be happy, like when I hear you and see your face and there's just this eminence of joy. And I think that's so special that you're talking about it and sharing it. That's why I do the same, because when I was trying to get sober, I saw a lot of people that didn't drink, but I didn't see a lot of people that didn't drink that were happy. It was like they were white knuckling it. And God bless them, they were doing everything they could, 10 meetings a day, like whatever shit they needed to just to survive themselves. And I was like, I am so uninterested in that. If I'm going to be miserable, I'd rather be drunk and miserable. And
Right.
so I just kind of went on this crusade of like, how am I going to be happy without this? And I am, and I don't need it, and I don't miss it, and I don't crave it, and it's not hard. I just don't drink, just like I wouldn't chug nail polish. It's just not in my consciousness to do so. And I just really want people to know if they are struggling, whether it's a deep, horrific addiction of a fifth of vodka a day. I was the same. I drank all day, every day, and had to, or I would have probably seized to death. Or if you're one of those people that are just below the line, and there's so many people, it's not bad enough to like rehab or maybe quit forever, but it's bad. And the consequences are bad. Your marriage is suffering, your kids, your job, like whatever it is. I think it's important to take an honest look and say, how is this serving me and how is this hurting me?
Right.
But also know that on the other side is not just white knuckling, "Oh, just let me try and not use." There is so much freedom and beauty and joy on the other side of it when you do the work.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Now for me, like I realized I had to quit drinking because my health, like I mean, I couldn't function, like I said, without drinking. And then I was getting bruises, and it really wasn't a blessing in disguise that I was actually then hospitalized with pancreatitis. And then the doctor like said, "Hey, you're going to die within 10 years if you don't quit." And I was like, "What? I have kids though. What am I doing?" And I really had to sit with myself and be quiet. And no one visited me. Everyone probably hated me during that time. I was in the hospital for a week. Nobody visited me. It was just me,
Oh,
myself, and my spirit just really just trying to do some self-evaluation. And I just remember like, I need to change. Why not? The better time, I'm here in the hospital to detox. And I actually called out for help. Like I needed help. I'm like, whatever's out there, help me. And that's what I
yes.
did. Yeah. Now I wanted to ask you, what are some of those key realizations that actually prompted you to seek a different path?
For me, it was the bone crushing depression and just not wanting to be here anymore.
Mhm.
I surprisingly, my health was intact. It wasn't great, but I didn't have some big medical, you know, like, "You gotta change now." I'm so surprised. I don't know how that didn't happen. But for me, it was my mental health, and it
Mhm.
was truly just not wanting to be alive anymore. And I did have multiple suicide attempts, and I meant them. They weren't cries for help. Like, I was ready to check out. I didn't wanna do this anymore, and I didn't believe that I could get sober. I wanted to. I was one of those people that always knew I needed help. I was not in denial. I was like, I am a mess. I really need help. But for me, the cravings were so awful. And the experience of being in my body present was so uncomfortable. Like it still makes me want to just squirm out of my skin. It was just so unbearable to be alive and awake. And I just, some of it was trauma, some of it was anxiety, some of it was, just I had completely disconnected from myself and God. And so my soul was just not even really in my body. And then I was like here trying to make it work. But so really being present on any level with the depression that I was feeling was one of the biggest catalysts. But I'll tell you, the other one happened like so often it does from one of the worst moments of my life. So, um, I'm in Tampa. I'm dating one of the Yankees. It's spring training again. On the surface, everything looks great. We're fighting. I decide I'm going to leave last minute and get a hotel room at the Intercontinental. There was this dude I had met. I invite him to the hotel. I actually was pretty sober for me. I had only had a couple glasses of wine. And fast forward, I wake up in a bathtub in my hotel room. Sheets have been stripped. I knew I'd been assaulted. And what was interesting about this moment is the first time in my life where I felt compassion for myself. I didn't do the thing that I had always done, which is this is your fault. You caused it. Of course, this happened to you. This is what happens to people like you. I didn't do that. I really genuinely felt sadness for myself. And that was one of the biggest moments where I was like, maybe I could do this. If I love myself and I'm sad this happened and I have compassion, maybe it's possible for me. And I always, when I tell this story, I like to also follow it up with this. If you are somebody that has not had that experience yet, and you're sitting here listening, going, well, I was assaulted and I still think it's my fault, or I still hate myself, or I can't let it go. It's an invitation to open into the possibility that that compassion is there. And I hear you, because that was me a million times until it wasn't. And I don't know what happened, what shifted, what changed, but miracles are always available to us. And so if that has happened to you, I will say it for you. Like, that should have never happened to you. And just being able to deepen into the sadness, because once I felt that compassion, I was actually able to get help.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It takes me back to even my childhood where, oh, my mom, because my father was murdered when I was a baby, and
Mm.
I didn't have a father figure at all until, I mean, until my mom brought a man into our lives. I'm the youngest of four. My kids, my siblings are a lot older than me. 11, 10, and 7 years older. And
Oh, wow.
so, yeah, so I was like the baby. So she brought this man thinking good intentions, because she would see me draw pictures of myself with the man and my mom, like a family little unit there. But he had bad intentions. He had literally molested me from the ages of 6 to 12 years old. And for
Mm.
some reason, like I never blamed my mom ever. Like I never thought it was anybody's fault. I always felt it was my own fault. And so I really resonate with when we think it's our fault and that we're not worthy of getting help. And it was bottled up inside so long for so many years. I want to say until I was 22, had one of those family interventions, because I was reckless. But I finally said, hey, probably the reason why I'm acting like this is because I was molested from the years of 12 or from 6 to 12 years old. And then everyone was silent. My mom then even questioned me, like, if there was a particular like birthmark around that area or whatever. And I had to say, yeah. And she's like, do you want me to find him? Da, da, da. I'm like, no, I don't want to relive that horror story. Let me just get it out. But the interesting thing is, I was never talked about ever after that. To this day, we don't talk about it. So that's why I think I have a podcast so that
Yeah,
we
you
can
talk
share.
now.
I'm sharing it to the whole world and everyone's sharing their stories too. And I think that's such a good place that we can share these stories, because I think people need to listen so they can relate, so they don't feel alone. Because I felt alone. None of my friends have gone through that growing up in high school and then in college, never. So I had nobody to talk to. So that's why I probably went to the bottle, because I had low self-confidence, low self-worth, and no self-worth actually. And yeah, just the alcohol made me feel more confident, like I could take on the world, and really just destroyed me. Yeah.
Yeah, what a horrific burden to carry as a child. And the thing with assault that is really, really damaging to us is, if I perpetrate you, shame is it's created, right? Like that energy is created. But with perpetrators, so often they don't assume it. So this shame is created, but then the victim picks it up. So you're holding their shame for them.
Mhm.
We become the container for that. And then we protect our parents so often. I like this analogy. If you're in a plane and it starts shaking and the lights go out and the oxygen masks drop. Like, do you want you to be crazy or the pilot to be crazy? You know what I mean? Like, you need the pilot to be in control. And as children, we understand on a very deep level that we need our parents for survival. So often too, we pedestal them. We have to see them as competent, right? So we don't make it their responsibility or fault. And again, we resume that responsibility again. And then we come down to control. If this bad thing is happening to me, it's much better if I'm in control of it, because then maybe I can stop it. And so on an unconscious level, we take responsibility as well because we're trying to control the situation. I mean, there's so many different ways this shows up. And then we grow up and then we establish a pattern that it's my fault, I'm responsible. And some of that actually is valid, right? I'm not responsible for what happens to me, but I'm always responsible for healing it.
Mhm.
So some of that wisdom needs to remain. But taking responsibility for somebody else's atrocious behavior, it is never our fault. You never, especially as a kid,
Yeah.
did anything to ever deserve that. And it's interesting when we look at trauma, because humans are exceptionally resilient. I mean, think about what people have gone through. Like, people will say now, this is the worst time in history. And I'm like, I'm going to challenge that. Like, can you imagine it's a Holocaust and you're over there? Like, there's been some atrocious shit. But look at how resilient people are. Here's the problem: when trauma is not witnessed appropriately, that's how it gets stuck in the body and
Mhm.
in stored. And that's how we see PTSD, right? Like, when we are hurt, injured, in pain, grieving, and we have a compassionate witness, we can move it. It doesn't need to stay a part of our life that impacts every moment. Will it always be a part of us? Yes. I mean, that's one of the thing with exposure therapy and different types of trauma modalities that really I don't believe in. Like, oh, let's just expose you to this till it doesn't hurt anymore.
Mhm.
Something, like a big violation like that should always hurt your precious heart. But it doesn't need to manipulate and control you. It doesn't need to steal from you any more than it already has. Like, that's healing.
Right. And I noticed during my healing journey, like I had tried the whole AA, the 12 steps, and I'm just like, it's not working out too well for me. I just didn't align to the people there, the teachings there. I didn't want to call myself an alcoholic because I was already sober for some months. And I just didn't want to hear stories that just storytelling. I mean, storytelling, okay, don't get me wrong. Storytelling is very powerful. And I think I appreciated hearing the stories, but just for people to, the same people, the same story, it's like, and then they haven't really changed. So I wanted to see growth. I wanted to see something else.
Yes. No, I feel ya. I remember sitting in an AA meeting and I finally opened up to this woman and I said, "Yeah, I don't think this is my jam. Like, this is not for me." Coming in, reading the same thing every single day, hearing the same stories, the cigarette smoke. I'm getting hit on all the time by these vultures that are like trying to take advantage of somebody vulnerable. Like, this just doesn't feel safe. And she looked at me and she said, "Well, if you don't do AA, you're never going to get sober." And like, what an asinine, insane thing to tell somebody, because I don't do AA. I'm very glad it's out there as a free resource and community for people that it works for. I mean, God bless you. That's amazing. By all means, do it. But for me, I'm sitting there going, I don't want to do AA. And now I'm being told I'm never going to be sober without it. Such a dangerous message and so untrue. There are so many amazing programs out there. You've got plant medicine, you've got smart recovery, I mean, there's so many things that you can do. Absolutely
Yes,
never, ever, ever believe there is a one size fits all.
absolutely. Yeah, how dare she? You will never recover without a. You can, because I didn't. I mean, I'm recovered.
Yes,
Yeah, and I
totally
didn't use
possible.
AA. Can you actually walk us through some steps and mindset shifts that were crucial during your transformative period?
Well, I also want to say as well, I did aversion therapy. So
Mhm.
I had a very different journey. I went to a hospital where I walked into a tiny little room. They injected me with something that caused flu like symptoms. Then I drank an entire water glass full of Epicac. Those of you that don't have kids that don't know what this is, it's like if somebody ingests something poisonous, you give them a tablespoon. I slammed a water glass full of Epicac and then just drank 20 glasses full of alcohol, vomited for 24 hours, and I did it 10 times in a row. And then the other thing I did is propanol treatment. So propanol is actually what Michael Jackson overdosed on, but they would administer it in a dose where I was out. Like, I don't remember these counseling sessions, but I was still able to speak. So they were doing counseling with my unconscious. I would
Mhm.
wake up in a room an hour later, listen to these tapes. They also did a lot of affirmations when I was in that altered state. So I was an alcoholic for 20 years. I did 10 days of treatment and I never wanted to drink again. So, a lot of the tools that I think are important are around cravings and everything like that. I personally did not need to do them. I changed my brain 100%. And then I did a lot of therapy. I had a lot of abuse that I needed to work through. I've done a lot of somatic work. So, I really believe it's not enough to just talk about our story, and a lot of people will tell their story from the neck up. So if you can kind of think about listening to somebody recall some of their painful moments, their heart is not on board as they're speaking it. It's almost as if they're talking about it as it happened to somebody else. It's really important that we somatically get into the body, and there's lots of tools for that. There's tapping, there's EMDR, lots of different somatic practices. But when we can really drop in, get fully present, connect with our heart and share our story from that space, that's how we really dispel the energy charge around it, and we can feel and heal and move it. I also was very called to ayahuasca, so I've worked with some shamans now for over 10 years. Plant medicine has been a big part of my healing as well. I do think it's exceptionally important that we talk about set and setting, finding people that are trained and safe. I also believe integration of those experiences is so, so critical. And they're not for everyone. So I don't advocate that for people, but I do believe that it's something worth looking into, researching, praying about if you are struggling. I mean, right now the opiate epidemic is wiping people out at such an astonishing rate, and ibogaine is phenomenal for addiction. It can help really reset those centers, but it also eliminates the opiate withdrawal. So there's a lot of research being done right now. I'm really excited about those treatments becoming more available. We're seeing a lot of MDMA therapy for veterans with horrific PTSD. And again, if I take a substance, my heart is opened, I'm flooded with euphoria, and I tell my story from that place to a compassionate witness. Now I can re imprint the emotional experience attached to that story. So it's really beautiful work that's being done. You don't need to take anything to do this work, but I do feel a lot of hope for some of the modalities that are going to become more readily available.
Oh, wow. I didn't know there was so much out there that's available. Now, I'm curious about the whole ayahuasca ceremony. Is it ceremony? Like, is it,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you share a little bit about that? Because, like, being sober, I've been open up to a lot of things. I get information sent to me. My psychic ability has heightened tenfold. Like,
Mhm.
it's been like, it's an amazing journey when you're sober minded. It's like, wow, why was I not sober earlier? Because I feel like I'm in a constant high. Like this world, I look at it and I mean, I trust me, I've had my horrible darkness, spiritual awakening in the whole 2020, learning about the world, learning about pharmaceutical, learning about what government, learning about all this.
Mhm.
I had to learn all that. And then it just opened up other doors for me. And I'm just like so interested in learning about more spirituality, and like frequencies, vibrations, energies, this, that. I'm open to everything. I want to know everything. And that's what I call it. Like, please let me just bring all the information to me. I want to know everything. So I'm curious about the ayahuasca because it opens up the DMT chemical release, and which gives you a whole different like spiritual experience. And I hear people come out of there like completely different and will no longer want to use or drink or do anything. So can you share your experience with that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to. So I will say when I first was called to ayahuasca, I was terrified. I was a few years sober. I didn't want to take anything. I was so scared. Like, what if this undoes the inversion, or am I doing drugs? Or I had all those questions. And one thing about me is I have always had a pretty good meditation practice. Like, I will get still and listen. And like you said, especially once you get sober, those messages, whether it's God, your soul voice, like whatever, you just get these very clear intuitive hits. As we heal our guts, I mean, that's a big one, right? Our gut is the throne of our intuition. And so we need to keep it healthy so we can hear what those messages are. But it was very clear. It was like, no, go do this. You're fine. So I did a lot of research. I found, really safe, amazing people. And actually, the story I want to share is there was a gentleman in this circle, and he's given me permission to tell this story. He had just lost his mother to alcoholism. So this young man, mom just died from drinking. He brought her urn to this ceremony. And you know how sometimes we get caught on a thing? So his thing that wouldn't allow him to start processing her death is there was a plaque on this urn and he didn't know what to write on it because he's so mad at her, hates her, loves her, misses her, mad at the addiction, mad that she died, all the feels, right? So he didn't know what to write to honor her on her urn. So he puts it up at the altar. We all take the medicine, and yes, it releases it's a shamanic root. It causes DMT to be released in the body. So DMT is released when we're born and when we die. It really is the God molecule. And yes, we can connect to other realms. And while he's using the medicine and under the influence of ayahuasca, he crawls over to the altar and he's staring at her urn. And he is just praying, like, please, like, how do I honor her? How do I forgive her? How do I become whole again from this? How do I heal? What do I write on here? And at that moment, he's looking at this shiny plaque and it's basically a mirror. And he saw his face on her urn and knew that they will always be connected. It doesn't matter what he writes. He can never lose her because he came from her. And you can never lose what you are. And the next morning, as he's sharing all of this, it was just such a beautiful moment of acceptance and honor and reverence for death and the process. So, those are the types of experiences that people can have under these medicines and using these medicines appropriately. And I will say, it drives me absolutely nuts when people are like, oh, I did this one thing and then it just like fixed me, right? Because no, these are tools. These are sacred, beautiful, incredible tools. And we're still humans having a human experience. We can have a spiritual experience, we can anchor it, we can integrate it, but then you got to show up and life is going to life. And you have very deeply ingrained patterns. You are going to have a natural inclination to respond to the world the way you always have, even though you have these beautiful insights, right? Like it is our responsibility to then show up in life as that and to carry that experience into every moment. And so that takes it to a whole new level when we begin living like that, are the best that we can without the medicine.
Yes, yeah, and that's what I'm experiencing lately. This is during this incredible time. Like I feel like the world is shifting. Our consciousness as a collective is coming together. I mean, it's going to take time, of course, because we were so programmed, so this, so that, and I've seen a lot of people get out of their addictions and it's so beautiful. And I'm just like, yes, they're coming back to their body and coming back to their soul. Or their soul is coming back to them because it was gone for a while when we're numbing it and masking it with substance, as like drugs and alcohol. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
I love that the idea too, when you think about an essential oil, right? Like a doTERRA
Mm,
oil of lavender. How
mm.
did they get that? They took an organism, i.e., the plant lavender, and they soaked it in alcohol, ethanol, and it extracted the essence out. So here we are, this organism, this plant, we soak ourselves in alcohol. What comes out? Our spirit literally leaves our body. When we're drinking at an addicted level, we really are separating from our soul. So I love that you speak on that and articulate
Oh, and I love lavender too. I do massage therapy, and actually I have it on me right now. It's called this new product that we just have at the spa. It's like it's called Lola's. Oh, Lola is something, but anyway, the oil is beautiful, and so it just reminded me of that. I was like, oh, I love lavender. Anyway,
it.
so are you still a professor over at the University of Nevada?
Well, talk about a shift in consciousness. COVID for me was another one of those pivotal turning points.
Yeah.
So let's go back. It's March 2020. I've been a professor at the University of Nevada, Reno for 12 years. And my ex husband and I had a thriving martial arts school. We had 700 students when COVID hit. And then all of a sudden, lockdown. And
Mhm.
I remember I look at my ex-husband and I go, this doesn't come back. Like, even when we're allowed to reopen, people are going to be really hesitant to have their kids in a class with 100 other kids. Everything that made us special is going to be a detriment. And our overhead is wicked high. So I just looked at him. I'm like, sell it all. Let's move to Mexico. And we did. We sold the building, our house, car, everything we owned, all our furniture, and we retired down to Mexico. And we were there a year. Our marriage was already very rocky. That was kind of the Hail Mary because I'm like, dude, if you can't get it together down here, living in paradise, retired,
Yeah.
like, okay, at some point I tap, you know what I mean? So then I've been going through the process of divorce for a year and a half and just kind of now. So I'm not a professor anymore. I do work with clients online and I go and I do a lot of intimacy work with couples. Like, I will fly out to Austin, Scottsdale. I've been bouncing all over the country working with people doing these intensives. Because for me, when I think of what is the opposite of addiction, right? Addiction is numb, the opposite is intimacy. And the thing that I am more in service to than anything in the world is love. I
Mhm.
just absolutely love it. So, working with couples has been one of the greatest joys of my life, like helping people really connect. And I'll tell you again, just to bring it like talking from the neck up, just think of how many times we try to solve our problems from that place. And we come to our partner and it's like, you're not doing this. And right. And it's neck up. You're not online. Your heart is closed. People's defense mechanisms, abandonment wounds get triggered. All of a sudden, we're like 4-year-olds trying to negotiate and solve really complex issues, right? So, if you're in a relationship and you're working through some stuff, which everybody is, I highly encourage take a few minutes and sit and face one another first and just eye gaze.
Mhm.
And women, follow your man's breath. Let him breathe. Start breathing in rhythm. We're attuning the body, we're syncing frequencies. And then just look at one another and if this is true, say, I love you and I choose you and you're my partner. And my intention in bringing this conflict up with you is to connect on a deeper level and then go into what you need to say. Because when we come at one another with problems and we're not dropped into our heart and we haven't created a container of I love you and I'm not going anywhere, oh my God, we're just like a raw exposed nerve. Like, we get hijacked. Your
Yeah.
adrenaline, your cortisol dumps. I mean, it's a real thing. Blood's in your fingers. You're ready for a fight or a freeze or a flee. And we just, I don't know, we can't do that for one with one another anymore. It's like really important if your marriage, your relationship, whether it's with your kids, your partner, is sacred, treated it such. Like, let's start doing it differently. And it's really beautiful. So that's more what I'm doing now.
That's so awesome. And then you were a TEDx speaker. How was that experience, by the way? Was that fun or what?
Oh, it was a blast. I am so thankful for it. And I was so fortunate because teaching, in a lecture room of 200 students, I got to practice public speaking for a decade. But then when I did TEDx, they were like, you need to memorize a 10-minute speech. Like, you don't get
Oh,
to just go up there and do your thing. And I was like, what? So it really challenged me. It really challenged me. But they were phenomenal, and there was wonderful people that were helping. And yeah, it's been such a blessing. I highly recommend it. If you have an idea, something you want to put out there, 10 minutes or less, and you have a solid punch, like, this is what I want to say. They do a phenomenal job helping you, even if you don't have a lot of experience. So big shout out to TEDx. That was so fun.
yes, because I mean, I speak to a lot of women who've done TEDx, and I'm just like, because public speaking, I mean, doesn't seem like it right now, but it's like one of my biggest fears from the past. Like, I cannot be in front of a big audience. I'll start laughing, I'll start giggling. And I noticed like at TEDx, like you're kind of have to be a little bit more serious. And I'm not serious. So it would be a big challenge for me to like go ahead and be on stage and just like talk on a topic that's like that I'm so passionate about. But it's like I will start giggling. And so I don't know. That's a practice that I probably would have to calm
One of
down.
the best pieces of advice that I got, and this is good. You can use it before a boardroom presentation, or, selling a house, or whenever you need to really drop into your power and confidence. It sounds so silly, but they told me right before you walk on stage, pose as Wonder Woman, hands on your
Yes.
hips, spread your feet apart, shoulders back, head up, do the Wonder Woman pose, and really just feel it. Like, feel like her, channel her energy, and then walk out on stage. And it's fascinating because it really helps.
Oh,
And when
wow.
you think about it, like, okay, we can tell ourselves that we're confident, but if our body is not responding to that, and our chin is down and we're hunched over and we're kind of in that more protective, slumpy posture, we're not feeling confident, because
Mhm.
confident needs structure, right? Like shoulders back, chin up, head high. So we can actually produce more confidence and seriousness in that kind of moment and channel that by changing the body. It's really cool. So, yeah, watch
Yeah.
your posture. It's so important.
Yes, changing the physiology. Yeah. And you're right, because that's what I was taught. So there was no recovery coach, there was no sobriety coach when I was in recovery. It was just, I had she was a fitness trainer, a mindset coach, and a yoga expert. So she really helped me get into my body. And that was one of the practices that we had, is how to build more self-confidence. Because like I told you, I had none. I have a lot of confidence now, but not in an arrogant way, but I have a lot of confidence now. And she says, you want to make sure you are, what does a confident person do? They have their chin held up high. They have their shoulders back, just like we were saying. How would a confident person talk? How would they act? What would they eat? What would they be doing? So I had to embody that and practice that and just like take on that until I started really believing that I am. And it takes practice, but then you start like saying, yeah, I feel pretty good here. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, what a great practice to do right before you're about to go on stage or having a big talk somewhere.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that too. This idea that, like, if I loved myself, how would I act in this moment? Or
Mm,
if I was somebody that really trusted myself, what decision would I make? Because there's this kind of like idealized version outside of ourselves, right? Like, our highest self is right here. And
mhm.
what we're trying to do is collapse into her. Like, we are really moving into embodying that. So it's a great question. That's brilliant. Like, how would I behave in this moment if? And start inviting that in. Because I remember I was having a client tap do some emotional freedom technique with me.
Mhm.
And, I'm walking her through this exercise where I said, I love myself deeply and unconditionally. And she's like, I can't say that.
Mhm.
And it broke my heart. And I didn't realize at the time, because then I started like asking people, and I had no idea so many people couldn't say I love myself.
Mhm.
I will tell you, I had the weirdest experience not too long ago in a deep meditation where I tapped into this like intense self hatred that I didn't even know existed in me anymore. Because I really do. I'm like you. I'm like, no, I am confident. I'm humble. I'm gracious. I'm grateful for my life. And I know who I am. I know what I bring. And I'm proud of myself. Right. So then to feel this like dark, shadowy, just like raw hatred for myself was like, oh my God, that's still in there, and that's the shadow work that we really need to be doing. And, if talk about tools, when somebody triggers you, there is some beautiful information of where your work lies because that trigger would not exist if it didn't also live in you.
Mhm.
Like if I told you right now, "Oh, you're so ugly, I hate your red hair," you wouldn't be offended because you're like, this chick's crazy. I don't have red hair. But if I say something that triggers you, there is a part of you that believes it or that energy or that resonance is in you. So it's like, again, even conflict or perceived failures or when things don't go your way, these are all beautiful opportunities to not leave ourselves, not abandon ourselves. That's what we did in our addiction, right? I can't handle this, numb me out, right? We abandon ourselves more than any relationship. We were the worst. We were the first and the worst, right? So it's how do I stay with myself? And then how do I dig into some of these dark, shadowy places and bring light to them and love to them and integrate my shadow so that I don't end up marrying it or it doesn't take me out in some other weird, funky way? It's like get to know all your tender, icky spots. It's so precious. That is the real work.
Yeah, there's a quote, you can't heal your body until you start loving your body. Yeah, you can't heal a body you don't love.
Mm,
Someone said that quote like that, I forget. And it's true, It's like, and so I started, so I have mirrors, of course, full body mirrors. That was another thing that my coach said, you need to get a full body mirror. Because she was doing fitness and everything.
yeah.
And so she would tell me, look in the mirror, and if you don't like anything, don't say, "Oh, that looks ugly, horrible." Just say, "You know what? I'm going to work on that. I'm gonna work on that." So, a little bit of cellulite there. You know what? Maybe it'll smooth out a little bit, or doing some more squats or something. I don't know. But also to admire something about yourself in the mirror. There has to be something, one thing that you love about yourself, and maybe your beautiful eyes, maybe your hair, something. I'm sure there's one thing. And so that's what I had to practice too. And like, I'm like, yeah. And then I started seeing myself differently. I'm like, wow, this stuff is working.
So beautiful. And two, I mean, just the experience of being alive is all due to our body. It really is our temple. Like childbirth, eating sushi, walking on a beach, any of your beautiful moments are because our soul is able to be housed in this temple. So it's like when we're criticizing our body or we're not treating it well, we're not exercising, we're eating like shit, all these things, it's like we are disrespecting the thing that makes being alive possible,
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, one of my favorite things that ever happened after a ceremony, the shaman was talking and somebody asked, what are we doing here? Like, really? Because sometimes when you have these beautiful moments and you get what's coming next, that one consciousness that we go to when we transcend this experience. The question is like, what are we doing here? Right. And so he said the most beautiful thing. He said, God's only problem is that God is everything. God is everything. So God needed to separate so that God could know itself. So it's like, what are we doing here? We are all fractal expressions of God getting to experience life through one another. I mean,
Mhm.
connection, intimacy, like there's a reason solitary confinement is the worst form of torture that exists. We are designed to love one another and to know one another through one another. And so when I think about the body and what it allows us to do, it is sacred. And it's sad. I mean, I probably spent 11 years talking shit to my body. Like, if I were going to really condense all of those negative thoughts and moments. And it's, yeah, it's just heartbreaking. And I think too, as women and now with social media and all of it, it's just gotten so awful. And I mean, God, I was in the modeling industry. So talk about wicked hacks to your confidence. One person's like, you're perfect, put her on the cover. And the next person's like, oh my God, she's a troll. What is she even doing
Oh,
here? And they will just straight up say those
oh.
things to you. And then you're walking into rooms, with some of the most beautiful women in the world. And you're just like, oh my God, it was really rough. But I think about social media now and what it's doing, to young girls and their expectations. I mean, with all the filters, with all the everything, nobody looks like that. You know what I mean? There's so few people. I literally remember one time looking around, I'm in a room with a bunch of Playboy models, and I'm like, she's got acne, she has stretch marks, she has whatever. They're all amazing. They're all human. You don't see it. I saw it. It's nobody looks like that. So stop comparing yourself to all that shit. And when we start taking care of ourselves, not because we need to look better so men will love us, when we start taking care of ourselves because we love us, and thank you. And I want a long life on this planet. Like for you, someday you're going to have grandkids and you're going to be like walking around enjoying life. What we are doing now in our 30s, 40s, is really crucial to the quality of life we will have in our 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Mhm.
Like build muscle, not because you want to have a six pack. Like that's cool and all. Like by all means, I celebrate that. That's a lot of discipline. But you want to be able to live a good quality of life. So remember your why. What drives you? Like when we can return to that, that's a big thing.
Yeah, it's like the 5 levels of why. Yeah, ask yourselves why. Why that? Well, then why that? Then why that? It's a great practice, by
Yes.
the way. I love the 5 levels of why. And it reminds me about back in the day when I was like in my 20s, in my 30s. I remember like working out hardcore. I want this six pack and I want to look good. I want to do this. Now I just work out because I just don't want to be in pain. Nothing to like, oh, I need to have this body or this, that. It's more like, I want my back, I want to wake up and not have my back so stiff. So strengthening my muscles. It's like, you're right. As we're doing it now. So in our like, 50s and 60s and 70s, we're moving with our grandchildren, we're moving with our friends, or at least trying to encourage them to move because they're probably not the healthiest at the time. But just be the role model, And so yeah, oh yeah.
Absolutely. And now I'm sorry, but there's just no excuse. I mean, you can pole dance, you can do, bar classes, you can do Pilates, you can hike. I mean, what's available to us now? Find something you like. Because if
Hmm.
you're like, I hate going to the gym, I don't want to do it, then you're not going to. Let's
Yeah.
be real. At some point, you are going to go and do the things that make you feel good, whether it's yoga, whatever. Get out your normal routine, go try something different, find something you love. I mean, I found martial arts at age 30 and it changed my life. It was the best thing. I was like, this is amazing. I get to punch things and I'm not in trouble and I get to move my body and yeah, find something you love so that you will do it, because at this stage I work out so that my body doesn't hurt, but also for my mental health.
Hmm.
If I don't move energy, if I'm not flexible in my body, I'm not flexible in my mind.
Hmm.
As within, so without. It's all interconnected. You have to move.
Movement is very, very important, and I've learned that now. And like I said before, it was all about looks, and now it's just about me feeling better. And I notice that energy that needs to it's funny because like if I'm not feeling right, I tell my kids, I'm remarried, so I tell my husband, I'm gonna go heal myself, and I'll go in my bathroom. It's quite large, and I'll just do some stretches, breathe, and then I just feel better. Like it's coming out, whatever was trapped in there that's causing me to be moody, cranky, whatever, it's gone, and I can be myself again. So it does help with the
Beautiful.
mental state. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, any future aspirations, or do you have anything happening in the future? Any initiatives that are going to be happening soon? Anything fun?
I'm actually so I don't typically talk about things that I haven't experienced myself. So ibogaine has been on my radar for a long time. And I'm actually going to Nicaragua in May for a 2-week retreat. It's ibogaine, and it's a silent retreat. It's going to be an intense process, a very deep reset, but I'm really excited to be able to share what I learn. I do a lot of talks with, Supreme Court justices and police and policymakers. And I want to be able to talk about this because the research early on is promising. And like I said, the opiate addiction in crisis now, we all know somebody that has died. I had a really, really, really dear friend pass away not too long ago. He was a recent college graduate,
Mm.
and he did everything quote unquote right as far as buying drugs, tested them for fentanyl, showed it was safe. He took it and didn't feel good, was kind of nauseous. Friends were checking on him, but eventually they just let him go to sleep and he never woke up. The autopsy took 4 months because it is a brand new synthetic opiate that just hit America, and he was the fourth death from it.
Oh my gosh.
So this synthetic that they're cutting drugs with now that you can't test for yet because it's not fentanyl. They changed the molecular structure, and so you cannot test for it. It is between 100 and 800 times more potent than fentanyl, and we are going to start seeing a lot of deaths from it. Like I said, this is brand new. It just hit. And so, it's so important to have these conversations. Like, kids are not going to get the experience that we had where you're like, yeah, let's just try it. Like, you just can't now. And I'm sad for you, honestly. It's like awful, but you honestly cannot do it. You don't know. And so much is cut.
Mhm.
So much is cut. And it just takes such a tiny grain of sand amount that, that's it. And that's the only time we can't get better or recover. Death is the only time every single person on this planet can heal. I was one of those people that if I was working with me as my own therapist, it's like I would have never thought I would have gotten sober. I mean, it was unbelievable. And it was jails, institutions. I was so sick. And if I can do it, anybody can do it, literally. And it's cool to know that. It's cool to know it beyond a doubt, know it. And so if I can do it, anyone else can.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, for our listeners who are wanting to get in contact with you or even work with you, where can they find you?
So I'm right in the middle of a big rebrand on my website, but you can still go there. It's joweatherford.com. And then I'm very active on social media. So my Facebook is Joe Harvey Weatherford. And then my Instagram is at joe.weatherford. And there's a lot of free resources on there. You can always DM me and we can jump on a call. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about or want additional resources or referrals, please hit me up. I will send you whatever I have and happy to help in any way that I can.
Well, that's amazing, Joe. Thank you so much. Is there any last thoughts or anything else you'd like to share?
I just want to say this: presence is everything. My favorite book is Eat, Pray, Love. And I remember when I first opened the cover, it says, pay attention, pay attention. And at the time, I was like, that's so lame. Why would she write that? And now I get it. It's everything. It's like drop in, get still, listen, be curious, investigate, like Gabor Mate says, with, compassionate inquiry. I mean, even when we're talking about substances, asking yourself, what is the payoff to this? What is right with the drug? What is the experience I'm looking for? What am I running from? What am I looking to feel or stop wanting to feel, So it's like get present, but you got to get in your body. And we are so disassociated. We are so distracted. We are running around with our hair on fire, to-do lists blazing, like living in front of ourselves all the time. And life becomes this just rat race of I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll be happy when I get the relationship, whatever. And we miss our life because the way it works is the carrot's always in front of us. And we train ourselves that happiness is always outside of us. So it's like get still, drop in, down and in. That's how we feel. That's how we heal. That's where we find our joy and our happiness. And it's like, nobody's coming to save you. And that's the worst news ever. And also the best because you are the only one that can do it. But fight for yourself, prioritize your mental health, and love as much as you possibly can. Because at the end of the day, that really is the only thing that matters.
Yes, and this is the whole formula there that you just mentioned to to living a healthy, sober life. So yes, love, love, love. Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, Jo, again, and I really enjoyed our conversation, and I just cannot wait to see what you do in the future.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.